There was a child that got in trouble for hacking, and when the police talked to the mother, they asked the mother, "Do you think your son's going to continue to do this hacking?" And the mother said, "I think it's just a phase that he's going through." Now, what the police may not have realized is that if the mother was being sarcastic, she could have been referring to one of the 5 phases in the hacking life cycle. And what I'd like to do in this nugget is talk to you about each and every one of those 5 phases. Having some type of a model, or at least an idea of the phases of a process, gives us a better overview of it. So there's 5 basic phases in hacking. The first phase is reconnaissance. And that's usually done way before we ever launch an attack. The reconnaissance is simply gathering information about the target prior to the attack. And the scope of what we might want to gather in reconnaissance could include not only the systems and the hosts and the servers, but it also could include the clients of the company or the target, as well as the employees that we could leverage with social engineering. And there's 2 basic reconnaissance types. There's passive reconnaissance and active reconnaissance. With passive reconnaissance, we're not having any direct interaction with the target. For example, if we're doing a Google search or looking up a public record or looking at news releases for that company, none of that is direct interaction with the target itself. So it would be considered passive reconnaissance. On the other hand, active reconnaissance involves interacting directly with the target. For example, making telephone calls directly to the target, which might include help desk support, looking for information, or perhaps you get dressed up and you go in for a job interview at the company to get more information. That is absolutely an example of active reconnaissance with direct interaction with the target. Now, based on the information that we gather via our reconnaissance, our next phase is scanning. And we might have specific scanning that we're going to be doing based on the earlier reconnaissance that we did. So it could include things like port scanners, network mappers, ping tools, vulnerability scanners. If we know they have old modems for out-of-band management of their network gear, we might want to try some dialing to see if we can connect that way. And from that scanning, we want to gather and pull out the information we learned from the scanning, which could include, for example, which ports are open, which ports are closed, details on the network and host operating systems that are involved, the types of devices, and other information that we can glean from our scanning. The third of our 5 hacking phases is to gain access. And that could be gaining access to an operating system or an application that's currently running. And with that access, one of the next goals would be to escalate or improve the access that they have. So for example, if we got in through a maintenance account, or maybe a vendor or contractor had an account that got left open, and we're logging in through that, we'd want to escalate our privileges as high as we possibly can to get the most control over the system. It's also very likely with that access, we'd want to try to get additional access to other systems as well. And one way of doing that is take the compromised system that we're connected to and then pivoting from that machine and launching further investigation and further attacks from the compromised system. And the 4th phase of hacking reminds me of politicians. Somebody once told me a story. They said, "Keith, what are the 2 major objectives of a politician?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "The first objective is to get elected, and the second objective is to stay elected," which also may imply being re-elected. Well, that joke from my friend is also like the 4th phase of hacking. The 4th phase is about maintaining the access so that the hacker can not only keep but also return to that same level of access or greater in the future. And to do that, the attacker might implement features such as a rootkit or a Trojan or a backdoor that would continually provide that access in the future. And some of the benefits of that maintained and continuous access would be manipulating data, continuing to see what's going on in the network over a longer period of time, including more time to launch additional attacks. And the 5th phase in hacking is to clear our tracks or cover our tracks. The goal is to not be noticed, to hide anything malicious that we might have done on the system or on the network. Because if no one notices that the attacker was there, that continuing access and maintaining access is going to be that much easier. Because the attack was unnoticed and uncaught, and as a result, no one's taking additional action to prevent it happening in the future. So one of the aspects of covering one's tracks would be to make sure that any logs, system logs that are documenting activity on that system, either they're overwritten or destroyed or modified so that those logs do not reflect the attacker's activities. And even without rewriting the logs or deleting the logs, a lot of companies never refer and never review their log files. So in that case, it's going to be even that much easier for the attacker to continue to go unnoticed. In addition to the attacker not wanting the company to discover the activity of the attacker, in most cases the attacker, him or herself, does not want to be discovered regarding their identity of who is actually launching these attacks. In this nugget, we've taken a look at the 5 phases of hacking. And what I would like you to do is take just a moment and in your mind, go through the 5. Can you remember what the 5 phases are? If you can't, go back just a few seconds, take a look at the list, and make sure you have those reinforced in your mind. And when you do, I'll see you, my friend, in the next nugget. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.